Welcome to the SportsCapping.com podcast with free handicapping advice, odds insights, picks, and predictions to help you beat the sportsbook. And now your hosts, Jack Jones and Brandon Lee.
It's your host, Jack Jones, back with another week of free pick winners here at SportsCapping.com. Brandon Lee and I are coming off a 5-1 week on free picks. We bounced back in a big way from a 1-3 week to start the season. I went 3-0 hitting Vanderbilt minus 8.5, Broncos minus 2.5, and my 6-point teaser on the Ravens and Giants. Brandon went 2-1 hitting Mississippi State minus 8.5, the Vikings minus 6.5, while losing by a half point on a 6-point teaser on the Vikings and Packers. Brandon's one of the best handicappers here at SportsCapping.com, one of the guys I trust the most. And Brandon, nice work last week, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I had no doubt that we would bounce back after a rough week one. Just look at the long-term results here, and we're going to provide you with winners.
Yeah, that 5-1 week improves us to 92, 58, and 6 over our last 29 football podcasts. 61.3% winners. It's going to be hard to find that anywhere else, especially when all these are just free for you guys. We're doing the same thing this week, giving out 6 free picks. We have 2 spread picks each in NFL and college football, plus 2 bonus NFL teasers. We're going to start out with our free pick for Week 3 college football Saturday. Brandon, give the listeners your favorite free pick.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Pitt Panthers plus 4 at home against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. I think we're seeing a big overreaction to Pitt's 51-6 blowout loss at home last week to Penn State. The outcome simply doesn't do justice to how competitive Pitt was early in that game. They were a couple breaks away in the first half from that being a much, different outcome where they're going into the second half with a lead. Things kind of spiraled out of control and it ended up being a blowout. But, the total yardage was very close for a game that was decided by 45 points. Penn State only had a 90-yard edge. So this is a much better team than people think. And as for Georgia Tech, I got a lot of concerns with how they performed against South Florida. The Yellow Jackets made the Bulls look like a lot better team than they actually are. They had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter and couldn't hold on, giving up big play after big play on defense. And I just don't think there's any reason for them to be favored on the road in conference play. The biggest thing for me, I look for the Pitt offense to have a field day against this Georgia Tech defense. The Yellow Jackets gave up 224 rushing yards and 3 scores on the ground to South Florida. Pitt showed their running games for real, racking up 245 yards against a good Penn State defense. I also look for a big bounce-back game here for Panthers quarterback Kenny Pickett. He really didn't get to showcase his arm much against the Nittany Lions, and it was sloppy conditions with rain. Not only do I think Pitt will be able to put up points, but I also think the defense can make things really difficult for that Georgia Tech offense. The Panthers have the most talented defense since Pat Narduzzi took over. And with all those returning starters, they've had multiple years here preparing for the option offense with Georgia Tech. Key injuries here for Georgia Tech as well on the offensive side of the ball. Starting B-back Kervonte Benson is out for the season after getting hurt last week against South Florida. Benson was a big part of Georgia Tech's win against Pitt last year, rushing for 196 yards and 2 scores. Starting quarterback Taquan Marshall, he got banged up also in that game against the Bulls. Yeah, he's expected to play, but will likely be out there at less than 100%. And then starting center Kenny Cooper is also questionable, and center is probably one of the most underrated positions that people overlook in the injury report. Lastly, I did kind of mention earlier that Pitt lost last year to Georgia Tech. The final score there was 35-17. It was a 1-score game midway through the third quarter, so it was a little more competitive in the outcome. I like the revenge angle here, and I also think this is a very tough spot emotionally for Georgia Tech. Anytime you blow a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter, that's a game you feel like you should have won, and those are oftentimes the most difficult to bounce back from. Add in the fact that their biggest home game of the season is on deck next week with Clemson coming to town. I think they're going to come out flat here. Give me the Panthers +4, and I'll be sprinkling a little on the money line as well.
Yeah, man, I liked Pitt coming into the season. Took their over 5.5 wins, part of my top 10 NCAA football season win totals. This is a game I expected the Panthers to win, and I still do. I think it's a good time to back them off that misleading 6-51 loss to Penn State. I mean, that was a 7-6 game with less than a minute left before halftime, and Penn State scored in the final seconds of the first half and then rolled in the second half. But you mentioned it; they were only outgained by 90 yards, so. And holding Penn State to less than 400 total yards, no small feat there for their defense, and I love this defense. Big reason why I liked Pitt coming into the year. Georgia Tech giving up 49 points to South Florida last week. Definitely a pretty big concern. USF lost a lot of players on offense. Isn't going to be as good as they were previously years on offense. And those injuries on offense for Georgia Tech this week, definitely a big concern for them. Underdog's gone 4-1 against the spread the last 5 meetings. I do think the wrong team's favorite here as well. I'll be with you on Pitt.
All right, man. I like to hear it. Who you taking in college?
I'm going to go Purdue +7 at home against Missouri. Just feels like this is a rally the troops game for Purdue. They need to save their season here with a victory. They've opened 0-2 with losses to Northwestern and Eastern Michigan by a combined 5 points, so they could easily be 2-0. They've had 15-yard penalties keep drives alive late in both losses to Northwestern and Eastern Michigan. It's something that head coach Jeff Brom has harped on all week leading up to the game. How he's going to penalize his players for having these dumb mistakes. I think Purdue is going to have one of their best weeks of practice here and put their best foot forward here against Missouri. Purdue outgained Northwestern by 71 yards and then outgained Eastern Michigan by 60 yards. Feel like they should have won both those games, but they lost a turnover battle 5-1 combined in those two contests. Their offense is having no trouble moving the ball, 474 yards per game, 6.9 yards per play. But I think since they're 0-2, they are undervalued right now. In Missouri, starting 2-0, a little overvalued because it's come against weak competition. They have blowout wins against Tennessee, Martin, and Wyoming. And we saw Wyoming beat New Mexico State, but then get blown out by a rebuilding Washington State team at home. Missouri has a good offense, but its defense was one of the worst in the country last year and isn't going to be much improved. It's a Missouri team that went 7-0 against losing teams last year, but 0-6 against winning teams. So every time they took a step up in class, they couldn't win, and I think they're taking a step up in class this week. Purdue went into Missouri and won 35-3 as 6-point underdogs last year. The Boilermakers had 477 yards of offense, only gave up 203 yards on defense to Missouri. They outgained the Tigers by 274 yards in that dominant effort, and we're seeing basically the same point spread this time around, but Purdue's at home and they're a 7-point underdog. So I'm sure Missouri will want revenge, but Purdue will want the game just as much after their 0-2 start. And I'm not even sure Missouri is the better of these two teams. Clearly not enough to justify being a 7-point road favorite here.
Yeah, I like looking for teams like Purdue who are, 0-2 and, not getting overlooked a little bit by a lot of people, but actually a better team than probably their 0-2 record would lead on. With that said, I would lean towards Purdue and take them if I had to take a side. But I do have a little bit of concern here with the unknown with Missouri and, just how they're going to stack up against a better team. Plus they are out for revenge, and that is a big motivator in college. And Drew Lock could, expose this young and inexperienced Purdue defense. I'll personally probably stay clear of the side, but I do see some value here in the over at 66.5. I think these are two very good offenses and two teams that are not very good on defense. I think we're seeing a little bit lower number than we would had Purdue not played in rain last week in a game where they only scored, 19 points against an Eastern Michigan team. This is a very explosive Boilermaker offense, and I think these two teams will put on a show offensively.
Yeah, that's a good thing to note for the listeners out there is, check the weather from the week before. I know you've mentioned it in the Pitt game, how the weather was bad there, and then also in the Purdue game against Eastern Michigan. If you got an explosive offensive team and there's bad weather, I mean, they're going to get held down. It's going to be a lower scoring game than normal, so yeah.
It's a big-time neutralizer.
Yep. So I don't disagree with the lean to the over there either. Let's move on to week 2 NFL here. Brandon, what's your favorite free pick for Sunday?
Yeah, I'm going to take another home favorite just under a touchdown. I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons -6 at home against the Carolina Panthers. I think Atlanta's flying a little bit under the radar going into week 2 off that loss to the Eagles. While I think people are overreacting a little to the Panthers' week 1 win over Dallas. Even after scoring just 12 points against the Eagles, I still have very high expectations for this Falcons offense going forward the rest of this season. That Eagles defense is one of the best in the league, and there's a lot of teams that are going to struggle to move the ball on them. And while the Panthers are typically strong defensively, I don't think they pose near the same caliber of pass rush or the talent in the secondary, which I think are two things that can really neutralize this Atlanta offense. It's also worth noting here, Carolina is still without one of their best linebackers in Thomas Davis. He's suspended for the first 4 games. And there's a good chance middle linebacker Luke Kuechly, who's the heart and soul of this defense, could be playing at less than 100%. He is expected to play, but he hyperextended his knee late in the win over Dallas. And, even if just he's 95%, that hurts this defense, I think, just enough here. I'm also not buying into the great defensive effort by Carolina in week 1. They dominated a Cowboys offense that I'm not so sure knew what was going on. For whatever reason, Dallas wanted to throw the ball more with Prescott instead of feeding their best player in Ezekiel Elliott, who had just 15 carries. I think that Scott Linehan got the wrong idea there with that offense because they just don't have the weapons in the passing game. It's going to be night and day for the Panthers defense when they go up against the Falcons and all the weapons that they have on the offensive side of the ball. And I also think it's important to note here that while Atlanta's offense struggled in Philadelphia, this team is built to play at home inside the dome, where I think Carolina's defense is better suited outdoors on the grass and turf fields. The home team has covered 5 of the last 6 meetings. Matt Ryan also has a 4-1 record at home against Carolina. He's averaged 333 yards in those 5 games against the Panthers. On the flip side of this, Cam Newton, he's posted some of his worst numbers in Atlanta. He's completed just 53% of his attempts and averaged a mere 150 passing yards. I'm aware the Falcons lost 2 really good defensive players here in linebacker Deion Jones and safety Keenan Neal. But I still think Dan Quinn's defense is going to be able to make things very difficult on this Carolina offense. And a lot of that has to do with the injuries the Panthers are dealing with on the offensive side of the ball, most notably on the offensive line. Left tackle Matt Khalil is on IR. Right tackle Darrell Williams is doubtful. Guard Trey Turner is in concussion protocol and may not suit up. And keep in mind, they let all-pro left guard Andrew Norwell walk in free agency and did little to replace him. And then the other big injury on offense is a pretty big one here. It's Cam Newton's favorite target and tight end Greg Olsen, who's out with a serious foot injury. Add in the fact that the Atlanta is going to be the more hungry team, having lost in week 1, and the fact that they've had 3 more days to prepare. And I think this team is going to come out very hungry and could turn this into quite the blowout here. So I'll lay the 6 and count on Atlanta winning by at least a touchdown.
Yeah, good work there, man. You covered all the injuries and gave a lot of good reasoning there for Atlanta. I think the number might be a little high for my liking, but I'm sure the Falcons will win this game. Now they just got to cover the 6-point spread. And, I would lean that way if I had to. I actually like the over 44.5 better, and you made some key points that I liked the over with. Just the injuries on defense for both teams, with Thomas Davis being out and Kuechly, questionable, won't be 100%. 2 huge players for them. And for the Falcons, Deion Jones at linebacker, one of the more underrated linebackers in the league, and their best safety, Keanu Neal, out. So, I think, both the Falcons and Panthers could be good over bets with their defensive injuries here in the immediate future. And after their low-scoring games both had last week, maybe this number's lower than it should be at 44.5. So my favorite lean in this game would probably be over 44.5, but I would also lean to the Falcons as well.
Yeah, don't hate that at all. I mean, the only thing that scares me with the over would be the Panthers' offensive line and them just not being able to do anything. If you can't block anyone, it's hard to score. But you're getting ideal conditions in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and chances are Carolina will be able to put up some points here, and I would definitely lean that way, but I can see why you like it.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely expecting the Falcons to put up a big number. I think it's definitely one of the more underrated offenses in the NFL because what they've done under Sarkisian haven't quite lived up to expectations. But the talent is there, and it's only a matter of time before they really start clicking, and they should at home this week.
Yeah, and we're definitely probably getting a good number on the total just based on how low scoring of games both these teams played in week one.
Exactly. This week, I'm going to go with a big favorite, which is rare for me in the NFL. I'm going to take the Saints -8 at home against the Browns. I think the Saints simply took the Bucs too lightly in week one. It burnt them, and they found themselves on a 48-40 shootout loss to Ryan Fitzpatrick and company, and I think that loss will definitely wake them up here. They won't be taking the Browns lightly this week. Look for them to roll at home. Clearly, there's nothing wrong with the Saints offense. They had 475 total yards, 40 points against the Bucs, and I'm not ready to write off their defense yet. This was one of the most improved units in the league last season. Should be even better this season with what they did in free agency too. They just got beat by the deep ball time and time again. It's something that you wouldn't expect, but they'll definitely make the adjustments coming into this game. But this Browns offense is very weak, just not that explosive. Browns trailed 21-7 in the fourth quarter against the Steelers last week. They rallied with 2 late touchdowns, ended in a 21-21 overtime tie. But the Browns deserved to lose that game. They were dominated statistically, gave up 472 total yards to the Steelers, only managed 322 themselves, got outgained by 150 yards, but they were +5 in turnovers as they took the ball away 6 times from the Steelers. Not going to happen again this week. Their defense is improved, has some great playmakers. I love Myles Garrett, but their offense is way behind their defense right now. I just see no way the Browns can keep up with the Saints in a shootout. And the Saints are going to get their points because they always do at home. The Browns are 0-8 against the spread in their last 8 against NFC opponents. Cleveland 5-15-1 against the spread their last 21 road games. I think last week's results, keeping this line lower than it should be, I think the Saints should have no problem winning by double digits on Sunday.
I give you a lot of props for having the balls to take the Saints here, coming off that double-digit outright loss in Week 1 to the Bucs, who aren't exactly a team a lot of people were high on. I just got to see more out of New Orleans before I lay this kind of number with them. I saw a lot of positives with Cleveland. I think even though that game ended in a tie, they're going to come in very excited, and that they haven't not lost a game in over almost 2 seasons. So, the fact that they were able to rally from 14 down in the fourth quarter, I think that says a lot about this team. I think the defense showed some flashes. They forced 6 turnovers in that game. We saw New Orleans struggle to take care of the ball in Week 1, and the defense, as good as it might be on paper, and it was last year, was horrible. I would probably take the points here. But I don't really want anything to do with this game.
Yeah, my actual best, easiest winner last week was on Sunday was the Bucs +10, and I kind of figured they'd take them a little lightly, but I did not expect that kind of offensive performance.
Yeah, didn't even have to sweat it.
So I mean, you'd think coming out Week 1 you wouldn't have a letdown like that, but. That's what's really concerning for me. For sure.
It's the fact that it was Week 1.
For sure. So hopefully they get their defense together this week. The Browns, the Bucs do have a ton of weapons actually on offense, so if they can just get average quarterback play, they should be fine offensively, but they got Fitzmagic for one miraculous week next week he'll probably be garbage, but that's just how he's been throughout his career.
For sure.
All right, man, let's give the listeners a couple of bonus NFL teasers. What are you looking to take in week 2 here?
Yeah, I'm going to do another 2-team 6-pointer. I'm going to double down on my free pick again here. I'm going to tease the Falcons from -6 to a pick'em. And I'm going to use a similar tease with the Chargers, taking LA from -7 to -1 on the road against what might be the worst team in the Bills.
I don't think there's any might about it. I think the Bills are going to be the worst team this year.
Yeah, it sure looks like it. I mean, if Nathan Peterman continues to start, they definitely would be.
Yeah, for sure. I expect both the Falcons and Chargers to win their game straight up at least, so I like this one from you. I'm going to take a 10-point teaser this week. I'm going to go Rams -2.5 at home against the Cardinals, Chiefs +14 at the Steelers, and the Giants +13 at the Cowboys. I mean, the Rams basically just have to win by a field goal at home against Arizona, who, might challenge Buffalo for the worst team in the NFL. I think they'll be better than what they showed in week 1, but this Rams team is just another animal right now. I don't see the Chiefs getting blown out by the Steelers, and I don't see the Giants getting blown out by the Cowboys this week.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with that. Hoping my Chiefs can not just cover the 14, but maybe win outright. Something they haven't done, I think, almost 32 years in Pittsburgh. So we'll see.
That's the one team that's been their nemesis, man. Hopefully Mahomes can get over.
It's a new era.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, they looked. Their offense looked scary good last week. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, Brandon, and how they can sign up for your picks.
Yeah, I'm coming in off a number 4 overall finish in football last year. That's NFL and college combined. Heading into this week's action, having hit 59% on my last 155 in college football and 61% over my last 59 in the NFL. I'm still working on my official plays for this weekend, but you can definitely lock in a 3-day pass for just $99.95 and get all my winners. Definitely the best time to buy that would be Friday or even Saturday morning, depending on, if you want Friday night's college football or Monday's NFL. You can find me at sportscapping.com/Brandon-Lee.html. And how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, man, we're both coming off great football seasons. I finished number 3 in football last year. I got 4 top 9 college football finishes last 6 years. Top 5 in the NFL last season. 463, 359 college football run long term. 87, 57 NFL run currently. Coming off a 4-1 Sunday, Monday in the NFL and a very profitable week overall to bounce back from a losing week 1 college football. So feels good to be back. Feels good to definitely have a big 5-1 podcast for you guys. I mean, the Packers, some of you may even pushed on your 6-point teaser on the Packers, depending on when you bet it. Some of you may even won because I saw it at 6.5 a few places too, but mostly 7 on Sunday. So, yeah, good work last week, Brandon. It was good to talk to you again.
Yeah, man, and don't forget to tell the listeners where they can find you.
All right, you can find me at betfirm.com or hit me up on Twitter at betfirmsjack. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave a review if you enjoyed the show. That's it for this episode. Be sure to join us next week. We'll discuss Week 3 NFL and Week 4 college football and have some more free pick winners for you.
Thanks for listening to the SportsCapping.com podcast. For more free picks and predictions, be sure to visit us at SportsCapping.com.